Man, and I use the term ever so loosely. The ratty rod is gone. The owner was very happy with it. So now it's time to move on to other projects. Crusty, Musty, and Rusty, for example, right here. So I've started on this already, and there's a kind of elephant in the room concerning the VIN number. Clearly this is H0, and clearly H0 belongs to a 1970 engine. However, on a 1970 engine, this VIN would be stamped into a boss that's over here. So something is really up with this thing that requires a little deeper looking into. This is the inside cover of the Harley parts book. This happens to be my oldest book, 1961 to 1971, so of course 1970 is in that range. And they give an example of Harley VINs. So 1970 should have a number like 4A, which it does, a 5-digit sequential number, and then 80, which it does. So, you know, the book confirms that this should in fact be a 1970. This is a different parts book. This is, let's see, does it say 1954 through 1978. So this also covers 1970. However, the VIN number table is different. Some people might say, well, you know, this could be a 1980 because it ends in a 0. However, starting in 1980, the digit would have changed from H to J, so it would have been J0. So anyway, we know it's not a 1980. So let's look at some other numbers stamped into this thing. Here we got a number 2455873. This is a part number of the crankcase casting. Just the casting, the bare casting. When they pull it out of the mold, this number is the number that applies to just the casting. As it's going through production and they add bushings, they add alignment pins, they add studs or whatever, it becomes a different part number. But anyway, in the Harley way of doing things, this would indicate to me that this is a 73 or later based on these two digits. There's another number right here. This one is very difficult to see. It did not, cast real cleanly. But you look at it with just the right light and just the right angle, and you may have to trust me on this. This is 2-75. This is the date this chunk of metal was cast. So clearly, to me, this is a 75 or later. So let's look at the parts book again. And here is a crankcase 1970. The number should be 24555-70. And of course ours was 24558-73. So the part numbers do not jive up for a right-hand 73 crankcase. So let's take a look at the left crankcase, and we find another casting part number, 24534-72. In the Harley way of doing things, that tells me this is 72 or later. let's go back over to the parts book for a minute. We got a crankcase number over here, 24531-67. Of course, that does not match the number that is stamped, or rather cast into the case. This one fits 67 and up XLH or 70 XLCH. Anyway, that's what the book says. Alright, let's look at the left crankcase date stamp. Right here, 275. This would lead me to believe that there's a good chance that these are a matched set, because at least the dates are the same. So they were both cast in February of 1975. Belly numbers. A lot of issues made over matching belly numbers. So we got a belly number right here. There is no belly number over here. I'm not sure that there's supposed to be, though. There's no indication to me that there's been any grinding or sanding over here or over here. You know, it's that rough cast finish. I'm not sure there is supposed to be a belly number here. Okay, there is also another number stamped over here that matches the belly number. So I got two cases, a righty and a lefty, and they have this same belly number, even though it's not on the belly stamped on it, which would lead me to believe that these were in fact matched. Okay, and here are the numbers on the front of the case below the generator. P372, they match. Once again, evidence that this may have been a set of matched cases. Okay, we've looked at some numbers, and we're using the numbers to try to confirm or not whether this is a matched case set from 1970. I think we have conclusive proof that it is not a 1970. As to whether or not they're a matched set or not, the numbers would seem to indicate that it is. But there's a fairly significant mismatch in the mating surfaces. I've got my depth indicator on here. And the mismatch here is 9 thousandths of an inch. Let's check the mismatch here. The mismatch there is 12 thousandths of an inch. Let's check the mismatch here. Okay, the mismatch here is 7 thousandths of an inch. So let's check the mismatch here. And the mismatch here is 12 thousandths of an inch. You know, I'm just an amateur machinist, and I don't know how you could chuck this up on a milling table or milling machine or whatever they used to do this when it was rolling down the assembly line, have these bolted together, and they are bolted together with the alignment pins in it, and have that much of a mismatch. So although the numbers tell me they're probably a match set, the measurements do not. So you know, I'll just have to go down as not sure. This is probably not acceptable, and you know, if I was going to use these, I'd have to match them up. Alright, so we've looked at VINs, we've looked at belly numbers, we looked at date tags. The overwhelming evidence is that there is no way this motor is a 1970 set of crankcases. Now, the last thing I'm going to mention before I move on to other reasons why we're not going to use these cases, the cylinders. It's got 1000cc jugs on it. A 1970 would have been a 900 still. Anyway, 1000cc jugs, bogus numbers. The cases may or may not have been a match set at one point in time. Now, you might wonder why I'm airing this all for the world to see in these bogus numbers. For other reasons I'm going to go into, we're not going to use these cases. There's just too much wrong with them, but we'll get into that in a minute. You know, when you're buying one of these things, pay attention. I've seen a lot of things that, you know, maybe were a little questionable over the years. This one most obviously has had, you know, some kind of illegitimacy going on in the past. But, you know, if you're buying one and the guy's got it ripped apart far enough to read some of the date codes in there and some of the part numbers on it, you compare that to the VIN number and what year it should be, might save yourself from getting stuck with the clinker. Now we're going to talk about another reason I don't want to use these cases. I've got bolts in, not all of them, but evenly spaced around the case to draw it together. And focus on this area here. And just FYI, I can't get a 1.5 thousandths feeler gauge to penetrate any of these seams. So the cases are pretty well drawn together and seemingly they fit fairly well. But watch them right here. See that? They moved apart, they separated. These cases are warped. Now, I knew they were warped, and I've laid them flat. This is a 13th thou feeler gauge, goes right through. Yeah, 13th thou. I knew they were warped, and I took corrective measures by lapping them on a surface plate to try to flatten them out. And in fact, they're better than they were originally, but they're still off by quite a bit. So the cases are warped, the decks are uneven. What I'm concerned about is that there's a weird twist in them that's going to prevent the crankshaft, the flywheels, from running true in the center of these things. Anyway, like I said, I took corrective action already by putting them on a surface plate with a piece of sandpaper, double-sided tape down flat to it. I'll show you in a second. And I tried to lap them flat. The trouble you run into is if you have to take more than a few swipes back and forth on the surface plate, the cases get too close together and then the cylinders won't fit. And that is in fact what happened to these. Now a guy could go in there and bore the spigots out so that a cylinder will fit on there. But then you run into issues with the flywheels not having proper clearance, and they might rub on the side of the crank. You also have issues in the transmission. You might not be able to get enough end play on the main shaft and the counter shaft. So, you know, if this engine hadn't had problems with the flywheels and the connecting rods thrusting heavily on one side, I might be inclined to try to save it, but I already know there's a problem. I see evidence of this problem in the way the cases are warped and the way the decks are not even. I don't know that I could fix that. I've got a flashlight inside there, and you could probably maybe just barely see. I got to get the angles exactly right. There you go. You can see the light shining through there. Anyway, that's a pretty good size gap, a lot more than it should be. You know, 1,000th, maybe 2,000ths would be acceptable, but 13 is not. I got here my surface plate with a piece of this sandpaper on it. This is 18 by 24. It is a 3M product. It's a little pricey. Well, it's kind of a lot pricey, but it covers the whole block in one piece. I've got some double-sided tape, easy remove double-sided tape, you know, all the way across, butted right up to each other so there's no bumps in it. But anyway, if I have to smooth something or flatten something like the surface of a crankcase, this is what I would use, of course. And it's just a matter of, you know, working it back and forth until you get it where you want it. And it's especially handy for the beat up primary cover side. You know, you could tell by the shiny spots where the sandpaper is hitting and not, and you know, you can see it's touching over here, it's touching over here and over here, but it's not touching anywhere in the middle. So this has got a pretty good bow in it. But anyway, this is how you could straighten out a warped crankcase. You know, and I know there are guys who say, well, it's going to ruin your granite, the grit's going to get in between there. Well, I don't think the grit is going to get in between there because the entire surface is covered with this double-sided tape from one edge to the other. So essentially the surface stays pretty clean. This stuff, I do believe was made for like Velcro on whatever machine it was intended to be used on. It's this kind of floor sanding product. There's those little hooks. So the result of that is it peels right off of this tape, so you could use it over and over again until it is completely worn out. So what else is wrong with these cases? Well, it's hard to see, but there's either a crack or a deep gouge in through the countershaft boss over here. So, you know, I was going to mill all this out, press a new piece in there and then weld it, but you know, is it worth it? Illegitimate numbers, warped, you know, I don't know. So that's a problem. The number, by the way, these two numbers over here, 0.876, I was measuring to see if this was out of round. It wasn't. You've got peen marks. Somebody has peened this area around the steel insert cast into the case for the main shaft bearing race. It doesn't look like it was loose, but apparently sometime in the past somebody thought it was going to be loose. There was an unaddressed crack right in through here. When I thought I could save these things, I welded it. There were cracks all in through here. They welded them, the previous guy welded them on the outside, he didn't weld them on the inside. So once again, I welded these over from the inside when I thought I was going to be able to save these cases. I think this whole area of the crankcase was blowing out, all in through here. It was welded. It looks like they did a halfway decent job. That's really not too shabby. You got welds all in through here, all up through here. They're adequate enough. You got welds all down in through here. Weld over here. You got welds all in through here. Up around here. Interestingly enough, see this little extra lip right here? It looked like somebody put a bead of weld across a lot of this area, trying to build it up to get it to be flat again. But anyway, you see, this is where the problem started. You got a lot of heat going into here, and this is what causes your warping. If you don't preheat the crankcases and you don't have the two halves bolted together, it's going to warp on you. It has to warp. It's the nature of welding these things. If you don't take measures to prevent it or minimize it, you're going to end up ruining the case. You know, there was so much wrong with these things. You know, the welds look basically okay, but, you know, your bogus VIN number, you know, should be a 900cc engine. It's a 1000cc engine. The case is warped, all the cracks. There was no way I felt that I could put together a solid motor out of this. So I called them up, explained to them what was going on, told them I can't fix this thing. And much to my surprise, he said, get another set of crankcases and keep on trucking. So that's what's happening. I got another set of cases that actually look real good. I'll show them to you. Okay, these are the replacement cases. You know, maybe a little pricey, but you know, these are 1974. They are in as good a shape as I've ever seen on eBay. There are two little cracks I'll show you in a minute on the other side, but this is pretty much how they arrived. I didn't sandblast them at all. I did power wash them, and that's all I'm going to do to them. The numbers all drive up. It indicates that there's a date tag over here. It was manufactured in July 1973. The part numbers jive up with 1974 manufacture. I mean, these things are pristine. The deck heights are perfect. The bearing races are good. Belly numbers match. None of the threads are stripped out. I've been all around this thing with the feeler gauge, a 1.5 thou feeler gauge, and without even bolting the case halves together, there's nowhere that I could stick a 1.5 thou feeler gauge into a parting surface. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. Okay, this bolt hole was a little dicked up. Built it up with some weld, put a Healy coil in it, and this bolt hole was a little dicked up too. Built it up with some weld, put a Healy coil in it. Trapdoor bolt holes, none of those are stripped out. There's been no welding in here. It's never been blowing out. I mean, it just doesn't get any better. I'm going to be able to build a very solid engine for this owner out of this set of crankcases. So there'll be more done to it as soon as I get the pinion shaft and the sprocket shaft in. I'll be able to put the wheels together, true them up, and bolt this motor together, and it should go pretty quickly from then on out. But anyway, a very good set of eBay cases. This is going to make a very good engine for this owner. What more can I say? Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I am out of here. Have a good one. Bye.